All right, you lot, Davey here. Tonight's story is what happens when your battery anxiety goes full apocalypse. Not just your phone dying, but everything going to 0%. Masts, grid, cloud, the lot. You're about to meet Colin Switch Off, Maddox, Shed Goblin, radio nerd, and the only bloke on his street who thought, what if the internet does just stop? Everyone laughed. Then the sun coughed. Stick your phone on silent, imagine the signal bars vanish and don't come back, and see how that feels. This is Static on the Line. Right then over to Switch Off Maddox.
Welcome to PPFM's Storytime, a proper prepper FM production. Our selective short and long stories are here to enlighten your evenings or darken your mood. We do our best to fulfil both for you. So crack that tin or pour that brew. There's nothing left for you to do. Listen in and crack a smile and stay with us for a short while.
You remember the last time your phone battery died at 2% and you felt like the universe had personally attacked you? Yeah. Now imagine everything went to 0% at once. Not just your phone, the masts, the grid, the servers, the cloud, which it turns out was just someone else's computer, and that someone else was having just as bad a day. That was event day. The official term is Carrington-class coronal mass ejection, which sounds like a posh Victorian dying in a bathtub. What it means is the sun coughed, space burped, and everything with a microchip cooked faster than a Tesco lasagna, including, as it happened, my boss's laptop, which died mid-Zoom, sparing me a lecture about my attitude to teamwork that, frankly, we were both bored of. If you're new to the broadcast, hi, I'm Colin Maddox, 37, formerly of Customer Support, East Midlands Division. These days, people call me Switch Off. It started as an insult. Oh, ask Colin. He's one of those switch-off weirdos. Turns his phone off at night, like it's going to crawl into his brain and steal his dreams. They're not laughing now. Well, some of them aren't laughing at all, to be fair, but I'm getting ahead of myself. On event day, I was in my shed. You know the kind. Every British bloke either has one or dreams of one. 4 rotting walls, 1 leaky roof, entire ecosystem of spiders with names. Mine was, let's say, enhanced. I'd lined the inside with aluminium sheeting and an embarrassing amount of tinfoil. My neighbours thought I was doing some sort of budget kitchen refit. In reality, I'd built a Faraday cage around my radio gear because back in the long ago, when the internet still worked and people shared conspiracy theories about 5G frying our brains, I'd gone down a rabbit hole about solar storms, proper nerdy stuff, old reports about telegraph wires sparking in the 1800s, warnings from boring scientists nobody listened to. I'd thought, if that happens again, it'll be a bit of a mess. Then I'd buy more foil and some second-hand radios on eBay, just in case. I didn't think the universe would actually take me up on it. The first hint that it had was my kettle. I'd clicked it on, wandered out to the shed to check a coil I was rewinding, and heard the strangest sound. Silence. No background hum from the neighbor's extractor fan. No distant traffic hiss. No faint helicopter buzz. Nothing. Like someone had put a cushion over the world. I poked my head out. Street was still there. Houses still there. Mrs. Patel from number 6 was standing in her front garden, with her phone in her hand, expression somewhere between confusion and offense. My Wi-Fi's gone, she said, like she was accusing the sky. Mine too, added her teenage son, as if I were personally responsible. And the PlayStation, and the lights, and the telly, and power cut, I said. Probably. They'll have it back on in a bit. That was the first lie I told after the event. It was also the most innocent. Back inside the shed, my cheap mains radio was stone dead. No surprise. But the old valve set I'd scavenged from a car boot still glowed faintly, powered by the emergency battery I'd wired up. I cranked the tuner. Nothing at first. Then, under a layer of crackle, I caught a voice. All major grids reporting. Repeat, this is not a drill. CME impact confirmed. Probable transformer damage. Stand by for... The line went to static. I sat back on my stool. Oh, I said to no one. Bugger. I tried the local repeater frequencies. Dead. I tried the commercial bands. Dead. I tried a few of the more adventurous ranges I probably shouldn't have been sniffing around in with my amateur license. Dead, dead, and static. I switched off the set and listened again to the world outside. Really listened. People were shouting now, calling to each other. A car somewhere tried to start and failed. Someone's house alarm wheezed sadly and died. I thought of all the people whose phones had become their wallet, their diary, their ID, their only way to remember anybody else's number. I thought of how many things in the house beeped when the power came back, and how this time there was no reassuring beep, just nothing. I went back into the house. The kettle was cold. The fridge was off. The little red standby light on the telly, that eternal watchful eye, was dark. I went to the fuse box, flicked things pointlessly, then stopped, hand on the switch. "Colin," shouted Mrs. Patel from over the fence. "Is your power out too?" "Yeah," I called back. "Mobile's dead as well," she said. "The landline too. I was trying to call my sister in Leicester." I swallowed. "Probably just a big substation failure," I said. "They'll sort it." Second lie. It didn't last long. By evening, the whole neighborhood was out on their front steps, talking in that brittle way Brits do when something's very wrong, but we're still clinging to the idea that the council will send a leaflet. "How long do you think?" "Couple of hours, tops. The news will say something." "What news? I've got no telly, mate." Streetlights didn't come on. The sky, without light pollution, was ridiculous. Actual stars, like someone had installed a planetarium for free. Nobody appreciated it. I sat on my doorstep with a candle and listened. Far off, someone was doing the British thing and lighting a barbecue. Because if the fridge is off, you eat what's in it. That's just science. I should have gone to bed. Instead, I went back to the shed, because that's where the last faint whisper of the outside world might still be. The next morning, after a sleep that couldn't decide whether it wanted to be a nap or a coma, I did a little experiment. I took my old Nokia. Yes, I had one. Yes, I'm that guy. Out of the drawer, battery still half full. I turned it on. No network, not even emergency calls, just a sad little no service that suddenly felt very final. Then I went to the shed and wound my hand crank generator for a full minute until my arm ached. I plugged it into the valve set. Crackle, hiss, a fragment of voice in German, a burst of what might have been Italian, a distress call from somewhere up north on a maritime band. Lost main power, backup compromised, requesting immediate, then static again. But enough to tell me it wasn't just us. I sat there, breathing hard from the effort of turning a handle. That was the moment I realized two things. This wasn't a local blip. This was big. I was one of the only people in a 10-mile radius who could still hear anything beyond shouting distance. Honestly, my first instinct was to keep that fact to myself. Information is power. Power attracts trouble. I'd been trouble adjacent my whole life. I wasn't keen on moving closer, but secrets leak, especially when your shed lights up like a Christmas tree because you've got a working bulb and everyone else is sitting in 18th century gloom. It started with a knock. "Colin," Mrs. Patel again. Is your shed glowing?" I opened the door a crack. A wedge of warm, electron-powered light spilled onto the garden. Her eyes widened. "You've got power?" she hissed, like I was showing her contraband booze during wartime. "Sort of," I said. "Stored, and I can make a bit. With this." I held up the crank. She stared. "Is that a toy?" "It's a generator," I said. "Turns elbow grease into electricity." She looked from the crank to my radio. "What's that?" she asked. "A radio." "From where?" "Everywhere," I said. "Sometimes." Word got around faster than any signal. By lunchtime, there were 6 people in my garden. By evening, there were 20. They brought camping chairs and flasks and questions. "What happened? Is it just us? Is it worldwide? Are they fixing it?" I told them what I knew, which wasn't much. "Big solar flare," I said. "Massive pulse of charged particles hit our magnetosphere, fried a lot of long lines and transformers, took out satellites, anything with delicate electronics." I gestured vaguely at the dark houses. "Didn't enjoy it." "Can they fix it?" someone asked. "Eventually," I said. "They'll replace stuff, reroute, but it'll take time, months, maybe, years, worst case. And that's assuming we don't all murder each other over the last tin of beans first." They didn't laugh. Tough crowd. "So what do we do?" Mrs. Patel asked. I scratched my head. "Short term, share food. Don't panic. Don't drink from any stream that smells even slightly like a chemical toilet. Long term, learn how to live without everything we've been told we can't live without." "That's very vague," said a man from the end of the road, whose name I always forgot. "It's day 2, I said. "You want a 5-year plan? Talk to Westminster." "Oh wait, you can't." That got a weak chuckle. Then someone else spoke up. Can we make more radios?" he asked. "Like yours, for other streets, other towns." It was one of the teenagers, Aisha, I think, usually glued to her phone, now staring at my jumble of coils and wires like it was the most interesting thing she'd ever seen. "You got any components?" I asked. "No," she said, "just GCSE physics." I looked at the shelves behind me. I had boxes of junk, old transistors, coaxial cable, ferrite rods, things I'd bought over the years because they were interesting and cheap. For the first time in my life, the phrase radio junk didn't feel like an insult. "Yeah," I said slowly, "we can make some receivers. Simple ones, crystal sets, no power needed. Range won't be great, but it's a start." "And you'll What? Mrs. Patel asked. Talk to us? Tell us what's happening? Maybe, I said, if my voice holds out. The man from the end of the road frowned. Who put you in charge? He asked. Nobody, I said, which is exactly why I might trust myself. He didn't like that answer, but the others did. The first static line broadcast was accidental. I'd meant it to be a test. I'd scavenged an old car battery from the garage, rigged up my homebrew transmitter, lashed it to a makeshift dipole antenna strung between the chimney and the oak tree at the bottom of the garden. Range, unknown. Risk of electrocuting myself, non-trivial. I tuned to a quiet bit of the old FM band, took a deep breath, and pressed the mic switch. Hello, I said, feeling ridiculous. If you can hear this, congratulations. You still remember how to use an analog radio. This is Colin, broadcasting from somewhere in the Midlands, and you are listening to, I don't know, the static line. The name just arrived. I released the switch, expecting nothing. Then my doorway filled with neighbors, holding radios I'd helped them cobble together. Tiny things made out of scrap, wire wound round toilet roll tubes, earphones pinched from old MP3 players. We heard you, Aisha yelled, waving hers. That was you. Loud and clear, mate, added someone from the back. I stared. Right, okay then. Test successful, I muttered. Buggered now, aren't I? That night, by candlelight, I made a decision. I was going to keep broadcasting, not because I wanted to be famous. I'd spent years avoiding video calls for God's sake, but because every day without reliable information is a day when people panic, and panicking people do stupid things, like drink from the river or believe the bloke in the high-vis who says he's starting a protective collective that coincidentally involves them handing over all their food. If someone was going to be a voice in the dark, I wanted it to be sarcastic, moderately informed, and not in anyone's pocket. So I wrote some notes. I cannibalized more junk. I wound my generator until my shoulder screamed. And the next evening, as the first real cold front of the new world rolled in, I went live. Good evening, Wasteland, I said into the mic, trying on a voice somewhere between late-night DJ and tired uncle. You're tuned to the static line, possibly the only broadcast in Britain that isn't either government propaganda or some bloke playing Wonderwall on a loop. I decided early on, no music, partly because of licensing, old habits die hard, and partly because everybody already had Wonderwall stuck in their heads without my help. This is Switch Off Maddox, coming to you from an undisclosed shed in the now off-grid Midlands. Tonight's topics: what the hell just happened, how not to die of idiocy in the first week, and why you need to make friends with that strange bloke at the end of your road who hoards candles. Spoiler, it's because he was right. I talked about solar flares, about grid fragility, about the difference between we've lost the servers and we've lost civilization. I gave practical tips. Don't open the freezer unless you have to. It's a cold box, not a curiosity. Share perishables. That chicken isn't getting any fresher and your neighbor has rice. If the water stops running, don't immediately raid the pond in the park unless you enjoy diarrhea. I swore a bit. I made jokes. On the bright side, you can no longer lose an argument on the internet because there is no internet. You'll have to go back to losing arguments in person like the old days. I signed off an hour later with, stay warm, stay kind, stay weird. This is Switch Off, ending transmission on the static line. I turned everything off, sat in the dark, and wondered if anyone beyond my street had heard a word of it. The answer arrived 3 days later, in the form of armed men. Colin Maddox? The one in front asked. They'd come in a battered Land Rover that had clearly been through a lot with very little maintenance. The council crest had been spray-painted on the door like an afterthought. 4 of them, all in mismatched bits of uniform. High-vis, fleeces, boots. Only one had a gun, an old shotgun slung barely safely over his shoulder. Behind them, Mrs. Patel hovered anxiously. They're from the council? She hissed. Emergency coordination? They say they want to talk to you about the radio thing. I resisted the urge to slam the shed door and pretend I wasn't home. Depends who's asking, I said. The man in front squared his shoulders. I'm Gavin Barnes, he said, acting chair of the Regional Emergency Communications Committee. I blinked. That's a lot of words, I said. You write that on a business card? He didn't smile. We've been getting reports, he said. People hearing some unauthorized transmission, spreading unvetted information, causing excitement. Excitement, I repeated. Terrible. Can't have that. One of the others shifted, fingers twitching near the shotgun. Don't be flippant, sir, Gavin said. In a crisis, information has to be orderly. We can't have just anyone telling people what to do. You mean you want that job? I said. As representatives of local government, he replied, ignoring the dig, we have a duty to coordinate response. That includes communications. So yes, we'd like you to stop your pirate show and come work with us instead. I stared. You want me to, what, be your announcer? Think of it as a public service, he said. You'll be fed, housed, protected, owned, I translated. He bristled. Rewarded for your skills, he said, and your foresight in preparing. We're putting together a central communications hub at the old council offices, powered by generators. People will know to come there for updates. And those updates will say exactly what? I asked. Whatever we deem necessary to maintain order, he said. There it was. Mrs. Patel looked between us nervously. Colin, she whispered, maybe it's good. You'll have support. You can tell people properly what's going on. I looked at Gavin. Will I asked. He held my gaze for a beat too long. Then he smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. You'll broadcast the agreed messages, he said. The last thing we need is panic, because some ham radio cowboy thinks he knows better than the emergency plan. I thought of the emergency plan I'd once seen in a PDF attached to a dull council email. It had assumed 3 days without power, maximum. It had assumed the internet would always be there. It had a section on social media messaging. I thought of Aisha building crystal radios out of scrap. I thought of the raw, hungry way people had listened when I'd said, "You're not mad. This is big. It's okay to be scared." I thought of what would happen if the only voice they heard now said, "Go to your designated collection point and surrender your fuel, food, and portable valuables for central redistribution. It's for your own good," I sighed. "Gav, mate," I said. "I've worked in corporate. I know how this goes. We value your input until I say something you don't like, then suddenly I've violated policy 3.7. This is the same, but with fewer HR emails and more shotguns." His jaw tightened. "This isn't about control," he said. "It's about survival. Those two are not mutually exclusive or inclusive," I said. "Tell you what, I'll make you a deal." I stepped back into the shed, leaving the door open so they didn't panic, and scribbled something on a scrap of paper. I handed it to him. A list. Boil water before drinking. Don't burn treated timber in enclosed spaces. Rotate security shifts. Tired guards miss things. Appoint more than one person to authorize resource distribution. Don't let anyone hoard information, including me. He scanned it. "What's this?" he asked. "Stuff people need to hear," I said. "I'll say that, happily. Send me more sensible things. I'll say those too, but I won't read out propaganda. I won't tell people everything's fine when it isn't, and I won't become some shiny-suited voice of authority that tells them to sit quietly while their cupboard's empty." "And if we insist?" he asked. I shrugged. "Then you'd better hope you've got someone else who knows how to build a transmitter from a car battery and an old toaster," I said, "because I'm buggering off." He glanced past me at the mess of wires and equipment. "Couldn't we just take it?" one of his men muttered. I smiled. "You could try," I said, "but you'll need me to run it. And if you annoy me, I know exactly which bits to accidentally fry, so it looks like the sun did the job for you." Gavin stared at me for a long moment. "You're making a mistake," he said. "Probably," I replied, "but at least it'll be my mistake." He turned on his heel. "We'll be back," he said over his shoulder, "and we'll be listening." "Oh, good," I called after him. "Remember to like and subscribe." The Land Rover rumbled away. Mrs. Patel exhaled. "You're going to get yourself shot," she said. "Probably," I said again, "but at least no one will say I died of boredom." Word spread. It turns out if you provide something actually useful, news, jokes, advice on how not to poison your family, in plain language, without trying to sell anyone a subscription, people like it. Who knew? Within a fortnight, the static line had become a thing. We had a schedule. As much as anything had a schedule now. Short midday bulletin, practical stuff, weather eyeball guesses, confirmed rumors, longer evening show, stories from other settlements, Q&A, the occasional darkly comic rant. People sent in messages, hand-delivered. Because of course they did. Couriers started showing up, lads on bikes, women with pushchairs. A bloke with a donkey called Susan. They'd arrive at my gate panting, clutching envelopes. "For switch off," they'd say, "from the co-op in town, from the farm up near the bypass, from the people in the caravan park." I'd sit at my kitchen table and open them. Some were simple. "Tell my cousin in Long Eaton we're all right. The flood defense is held. We've moved into the community center. Dan." Some were desperate. "We lost our radio. Please repeat the boiling water warning. Some people here don't believe us." Claire. Some were practical. "We've got spare potatoes and a working well, swapping for candles and paracetamol. Twice a week market at the crossroads. Well spuds." I read them out. People listened. Trading routes formed. Skills found each other. A mechanic in one village, a midwife in another, a bloke with 6 working chainsaws and no common sense in a third. I started to realize that what I was doing wasn't just giving news. I was stitching together a map of who we still were. Then the fight started. Not literally at first, just competing invitations. "Come set up your station in our town hall," one letter said. "We'll give you your own room and as much food as you need. We'll even build you a little stage." Don't listen to them, said another. They're already trying to be a mini-government. Come to us instead. We're just honest farmers, we swear. Then, if we host you, we control the message, one charmingly blunt guy wrote. We can protect you. That's worth something, yeah? It was flattering in a terrifying way. It also confirmed Gavin's point. Information is the new electricity. Whoever had it and could push it one way or another could make people move, queue, fight, panic, calm down. And I was the bloke holding the microphone. I did the only sensible thing. I made myself less important. Good evening, you resilient weirdos, I said one night, feeling particularly manic after a day of generator cranking. This is the static line, and tonight's show is about my favorite topic, how much easier my life would be if you all learned to do this yourselves. I leaned closer to the mic. Let's be honest, I said. Having one slightly unhinged man with a shed as your primary source of news is a terrible idea. I could be making half of this up. I could be drunk. I could be dead. Please don't answer which of those you're currently hoping for. I could almost hear people chuckling in the dark. So here's the plan, I continued. Over the next few nights, we're going to do radio for the hopelessly modern. I'm going to teach you how to build basic receivers out of crap you've already got. I'm going to tell you how to rig aerials, how to avoid getting yourself electrocuted, and how to listen without being listened to. I paused. Let that land. Because the more of you there are with ears on the airwaves, the less any one idiot, including me, can control the story. I spent the next week doing what my old school teachers would have called delivering a technical module, and what I called shouting about coils at strangers. I described how to wind wire around a cardboard tube to make an inductor, how to scrape insulation off a bit of stalled car wiring, how to find a tuning capacitor in an old broken radio, how to use an earbud as a crude crystal earpiece. I explained what an antenna actually did. It's just a bit of metal that tells the universe you're interested, I said, like an aerial hand waving at passing waves going, "Oi, over here." I warned them not to transmit without understanding the risks. Listening is fine, I said. Talking back is complicated, technically illegal, also likely to make Gav from the emergency committee very cross, and he owns the only working shotgun with both barrels in this postcode. Within days, I started hearing whispers on the band, faint at first, a scratchy voice from the north. If anyone hears this, this is the Crow Lane lot. We've got safe passage through the old industrial estate. Avoid the canal. Water's gone weird. Another from the south. This is the bus depot crew. We're rigging an old double-decker as a generator hub. If you've got alternators, we'll trade. I grinned like an idiot in my shed. Good, I muttered. Talk to each other. Take the pressure off my poor knackered crank. With every new voice, my importance shrank a little, which is exactly what I wanted. Unfortunately, it also made me more valuable to the people who didn't want a chorus. They wanted a solo they could conduct. It happened on a Tuesday, because it always has. I remember because I was in a filthy mood. The old solar panels I'd salvaged from the closed garden center had cracked in a hailstorm. The generator had eaten one of its belts. I'd spent the afternoon elbow deep in greasy metal, cursing at designs clearly intended to be maintained by machine, not by one bloke with a spanner. I'd barely got the setup stable for the evening show. I flicked on the mic. This is the static line, I began. Tonight's episode, why maintenance is important and why past me was a lazy bast. The shed door flew open. I spun. Two men in dark clothes, faces wrapped in scarves, bulk I didn't like the look of under their jackets. One had a knife. The other had what looked suspiciously like a taser, which made no sense, given the power situation, until I realized he'd had it charging from my extension lead, my bloody extension lead. Sneaky sods. Switch off, Maddox, Knife said. Apparently, I said. If you're here about PPI, I'm really not interested. Funny, Taser said. He stepped closer. You're coming with us? Am I? I said. Because I've just put a stew on, and it'll be very cross if I leave it unattended. Knife grabbed my arm. Move, he said. I considered trying something heroic. Then I remembered I was 37, slightly asthmatic, and my main exercise regime involved turning a handle. I went quietly. They bundled me into a van, not Gavin's lot, different vibe, less high-vis, more, we watched too many American gangster films. We drove through dark streets, past little pockets of candlelight in windows, past a house where someone had propped a handwritten sign, "No, we don't have any bloody batteries." Eventually, we pulled into what had once been a retail park. They led me into a unit. It had been a discount furniture shop. Now it was a throne room, not a good one. A plastic lawn chair had been placed on a slightly raised platform made of flat-packed bookcases. Behind it, someone had hung a banner with "The Network" spray-painted on it in wobbly letters. On the chair sat a man in a leather jacket and a smug expression. He had that look, the one you get when you used to be middle management and the apocalypse has finally given you the authority you always thought you deserved. "Colin," he said, spreading his arms like we were old mates. "So good to finally meet you." "Have we met?" I asked. "Not in person," he said, "but I've been listening to you for weeks. You're very entertaining, informative too, inspiring. Inspirational people are hard to manage, but you'll learn." Behind him, on a table, I recognized some of my old kit. My backup transmitter, my spare coils, my carefully wound antenna spools. Bastards had raided my shed properly. "I'm Nigel Crowther," he said. "I run the network." "Is that like a pyramid scheme or more of a cult?" I asked. He laughed. "See," he said to his goons, "sharp. We like that." "No, Colin, the network is simply a coordinated communications initiative. We're building relay points, lookouts, messenger routes. We manage information flow across this whole region." "Like the council," I said, "but without the burden of electoral legitimacy." He waved a hand. "The old systems are gone," he said. "What matters now is who can keep people alive. To do that, they need instructions, guidance, a clear voice. That's where you come in." "Oh, good," I said. "Another fan who wants to own me." He leaned forward. "Let me be blunt," he said. "Right now, people trust you. They hear your voice and they think, that's our guy. He tells it straight. We could kill you, but that would waste that trust. Or we could work together." "Your definition of together worries me," I said. "You broadcast from here," he said, "using our gear, our power, our security. We pump your signal out further than ever. You make people laugh, you give them tips, and you slip in the messages we need them to hear, where to go, who to trade with, who to avoid, who to obey," I said. "Who to coordinate with," he corrected. "Words matter, Colin." "You're right," I said. "Here's some." "No, sod off, over my dead body." His smile thinned. "Don't be childish," he said. "This isn't about you. It's about order. Without order, we get chaos. With chaos, we get raiders, hoarders, little fiefdoms springing up. We get the strong preying on the weak." I glanced around the room, at the goons with the knife and the taser, at the frightened faces of a couple of locals roped into watching the door. "Perish the thought," I said. His eyes hardened. "You think you're above this," he said. "You're not. You're just a man with a microphone. We're offering you food, safety, and a legacy. People naming their kids after you. Static Maddox, hero of the airwaves." "Static Maddox sounds like someone whose hair you don't touch," I said. "And I'm not above this. I'm just sideways of it. I like it there." He sighed. "I was hoping we could do this nicely," he said, "but needs must. Boys," knife and taser stepped closer. "Last chance," he said. I looked him in the eye. "Get stuffed," I said. Taser raised his weapon. Then the lights went out. Not like before. We weren't on the grid anyway. This was more immediate. All the lamps in the makeshift throne room flickered and died, plunging everything into instant dark. Someone swore. "Who the hell?" A voice came over a speaker. My voice. "Good evening, you chaotic little gremlins," it said. "This is the static line, coming to you from somewhere that definitely isn't where Nigel is sitting, sweating slightly." Nigel spun. "What is this?" he hissed. "Where's that coming from?" A torch beam flicked on near the back. In its cone, I saw Aisha, hands on a makeshift control panel, wires running everywhere, one of my spare transmitters perched on a chair like a cat. "Hi," she said, giving me a quick little wave. "You didn't come on air tonight. We got worried, so we tracked your last transmission. It wasn't hard. You're very predictable when you're ranting." The speaker crackled again. "If you're in the old retail park," my pre-recorded message continued, "I'd like you to know that Nigel and his merry band did a naughty and tried to nick your radio guy. Nigel, wave for the listeners." Everyone in the room turned to stare at him, even his goons. His face flushed. "How?" he began. "I left a little surprise in the transmitter you nicked," I said, grinning despite myself. "Autoplay if someone powers it up off my grid. Does a one-off broadcast on a loop. I thought it might come in handy." A second torch beam came on. Mrs. Patel. Behind her, a knot of locals from my street, and behind them, more people. Farmers, traders, a couple of council bods, including Gavin, all looking grim. "We heard the recording in town," Gavin said. "We were just debating what to do when this lot turned up with a map and a very clear opinion." He jerked his head at Aisha. She said, and I quote, "We're not letting some retail park warlord nick our bloody radio man." Mrs. Patel nodded fiercely. "You belong to us," she said, then colored. "I mean, you belong to everyone, not him." Nigel tried to recover. "Now hang on," he said, standing. "Let's not overreact. We were just..." "Kidnapping," said Gavin. "Coercing," added Javed. who I hadn't even seen at the back. Being a prat, I suggested. The locals, my locals, spread out, blocking the exits. Nigel's goons looked at him, looked at the crowd, and did a quick calculation. They stepped back, the knife went down, the taser quietly switched off. Nigel scrambled for a tone of authority. "We could have done good work here," he said. "Coordinated. Instead, you lot want 1,000 little voices all shouting at once. That's not order, that's noise." "It's called plurality, Nigel," I said. "Bit messy, lot better than a dictatorship run from a discount sofa warehouse." Gavin stepped forward. "I'm no fan of pirate broadcasts," he said grudgingly, "but I've heard worse things come out of town hall, and right now you've just tried to grab the one bloke who's actually getting people to talk to each other instead of at each other." He looked around. "Arrest him," he said. "Oh, now you're happy to arrest people," I muttered. Nigel spluttered as two of his own lads took him by the arms. "You can't arrest me," he said. "I'm the network." "No," said Aisha, turning a dial. "We're the network. You're just static." The speaker crackled again. "Remember," my recorded self said cheerfully, "if someone ever tells you they alone are the voice of reason in a crisis, that's your cue to build 3 more radios and teach your nan how to use one." The room laughed, just a little, but enough. They walked me home in triumph. It was mortifying. People clapped. Someone had even made a sign that said, "We love static." "Please stop," I begged. "You'll give me a complex." Mrs. Patel patted my arm. "Too late," she said. "You already had one." Back in my shed, I assessed the damage. They'd nicked some gear, broken some too, but enough remained. Isha and a couple of others had apparently set up a backup rig in Mrs. Patel's conservatory, because of course they had. They'd been broadcasting my pre-recorded kidnap message on a loop for hours. "You lot," I said, pointing at them, "are dangerous." "Good," said Aisha. "We learnt from the best." Gavin cleared his throat. "I think," he said, "we need to talk about some ground rules." I braced. "But first," he added, "I owe you an apology." That I had not expected. "I thought we could run this like any other emergency. Top down," he said. "Issue statements, keep people calm, keep the story tidy. But this isn't tidy, and you've proven that people respond to honesty, even when it's not what they want to hear." He glanced at Aisha. "And they respond even better when they're part of it," he added. "So, how about we strike a deal?" "What kind of deal?" I asked. "You keep broadcasting from here," he said, "freely. You teach others to build their own sets. In return, when we have verified information about water supplies, medical issues, big threats, we bring it to you. You read it if you agree it's useful. If you don't, we argue about it like adults instead of pointing guns." "That's very reasonable," I said, suspicious. He gave a tight smile. "I've had a crash course in what happens when people don't trust official channels," he said. "Nigel's little empire is now our problem to mop up. I'd rather spend my time getting the sewage works running." I considered. "All right," I said slowly, "but on one condition." "Which is?" he asked. "You get a radio," I said, "a proper one, and you sit down once a week to listen to people telling you what's happening where they are. You're not in charge of them. You're in charge for them. Might help to hear them as more than numbers on a clipboard." He winced. "That's fair," he said. "Annoying, but fair." We shook on it. Old-fashioned, no contracts. No terms and conditions that quietly gave anyone my soul, just hands. That night I went back on air. "Good evening, you stubborn survivors," I said. "This is the static line, broadcasting from slightly more reinforced premises than before. Tonight, how not to get kidnapped, why distributed networks are sexy, and a reminder that your local council guy might actually be trying his best, even if he still dresses like a traffic cone." I told them about Nigel. I told them, carefully, that the council and I had reached a truce. I told them about the radios springing up, about the scrap-built sets, crystal earpieces, antennae made from washing lines and bed frames. I told them they were no longer alone. Then I said this. "You need to understand something," I said. "I'm not special. I'm just a bloke who got paranoid early. The only reason this works, any of this, is because you lot decided to get involved. You carried messages. You built sets. You told your stories. You said, 'No, you can't own that voice. It's ours.'" I took a breath. "Sooner or later, the big grids will come back," I said. "Not like before, not as strong, but enough that the towers on the coast will start humming again. Enough that some bright spark in a suit will say, 'We should centralize all this for efficiency.' When that happens, remember this feeling of making things yourself, of hearing real people, not polished spokespeople. Don't let them take it away because it's messy." I ended, as I always did now, with, "Stay curious, stay awkward, stay kind. This is Switch Off, signing off for tonight on the static line. Remember, you're not just listening to the network. You are the network." I killed the mic, sat in the warm glow of valves and candles. Outside, the world was still a mess, but it wasn't a silent one. I'd take that any day. The static line sign-off epilogue. All right, let's switch out of Colin's world for a minute and talk straight. No solar flare today. Your phone still works. You might even be listening to this on some shiny bit of kit that costs more than your first car. But underneath the jokes and the collapsed broadband, static on the line is poking at a few things worth wrestling with now, not someday after the apocalypse. 1. You are dangerously dependent on things you don't understand. If the event happened tomorrow, most of us would be cashless, mapless, contactless, clueless. We've outsourced memory to our phones, navigation to GPS, common sense to search engines, and community to social media. That's efficient, until it isn't. Colin survives not because he's a genius, but because he knows one weird, boring skill, how to make radios, and he kept a few things off. Switch off, literally. You don't have to become a tinfoil hat bunker goblin, but you might want to. Learn how to work a map that doesn't talk. Memorize 3 phone numbers of people you actually like. Print out a few important documents instead of assuming the cloud will always be there. Keep 1 or 2 bits of kit that don't need an app. Tiny shifts, big difference. 2. Information isn't neutral, and you are not just a consumer. When everything went dark, whoever could still speak loudest had the power to calm people, move them, scare them, control them. Gavin's counsel, Nigel's network, even Colin himself, all of them wanted to shape the story. That is not science fiction. That's Tuesday. News feeds, algorithms, trending topics, they are all in their own polite, invisible way, deciding what you see and what you don't. The story's big, dangerous idea is actually simple. Don't leave the job of telling reality to one voice, even if you like that voice, especially if you like that voice. Learn to cross-check, ask who benefits, and listen sideways to the quiet, local, awkward voices, not just the polished ones. 3. Skills beat stuff. Every single time. Nigel has muscle. The council has the shotgun and the clipboard. Colin, he's got a shed, a crank, and the ability to turn junk into communication. Guess which one becomes priceless when the lights go out? In real life, radio skills might translate to first aid, basic mechanics, growing food, fixing clothes, keeping a group from murdering each other over washing up duties. You don't need to become Bear Grylls. Pick one boring skill this month and level it up a notch. Learn how to stop heavy bleeding. Learn how to start a fire safely. Learn how to fix a leaky tap. Learn how to use a battery-free radio or build the most basic receiver. In a crisis, the person who can fix things and explain things tends to walk out in better shape than the person with the biggest telly. 4. Community is the real network. The big twist in the story isn't the solar flare. It's that Colin stops being special by teaching everyone else how to listen and talk. Aisha learning to build sets, Mrs. Patel organizing people, Gavin grudgingly listening instead of just broadcasting. That's the actual survival tech. Distributed, messy, human connections. You don't have to wait for a disaster to build that. You can learn your neighbors' names, set up a local radio net, WhatsApp group, or notice board that isn't just for lost cats. Share tools, share seeds, share information offline now and then. Practice asking for help and offering it. Because when things wobble, storms, blackouts, strikes, pandemics, the first real grid you fall back on is the people within walking distance. If you don't know them, that's a bug you can fix. 5. Don't wait for the flare to switch off. Colin's nickname, Switch Off, is a joke with teeth. He turned things off on purpose before the sun did it for him. Phone off at night, some things unplugged. Time spent tinkering with low tech instead of just scrolling. You don't need a cosmic EMP to try that. Have an evening with nothing plugged in. See what breaks. Fix it now while Amazon still delivers. Try going 24 hours without the internet and notice which habits twitch the most. Build one tiny bit of resilience. A battery radio, a printed phone list, a map, a manual, and throw it in a drawer labeled just in case. Worst case, you're mildly inconvenienced and slightly smug. Best case, one day when the lights flicker, you'll be the person with the crank in the shed saying, "All right, everyone, calm down. Here's what's actually going on." This is the static line, reminding you, don't let screens be your only sense. Don't let one voice be your only truth. Learn one small, stubborn, analog thing. And for the love of all that's still working, talk to your neighbors before the sun has to knock the Wi-Fi out to make you do it. End of broadcast.
And there you go. You made it through the solar spit tantrum. If that poked your brain a bit, good. Nick one thing from Colin. Have something in your life that still works with the plug pulled. A skill, a tool, or just a few things written down that don't live in the cloud. Lights are on, Wi-Fi's working. For now. Don't wait for an actual flare to get a tiny bit less helpless. I'm Davey. Catch you on the next broadcast.